We're joined once again by Peter Strzok, former top FBI counterintelligence agent and now the author of Compromised, Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. Mr. Strzok, I want to ask you a little bit about Michael Flynn. At the end of this month, on September 29th, the date of the first presidential debate, a court in Washington is going to hear arguments from the Justice Department as to why they want to drop their charges against Flynn, and this has been very hard fought. But what he pled guilty to was lying to you about his contacts with the Russian government. And one of the things that you lay out in the book that I find eye-opening but also mystifying is that, he had been the head of the DIA. He'd been the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He must have known that the Russian ambassador's calls would be monitored and that you would know what was actually said on those calls. And yet, he repeatedly lied to you about what he said on those calls. Do you think that he was lying knowingly to cover up for somebody else? Do you know why he was lying? Do you have any insight into what happened there, given how weirdly this has gone in the months since?
Well, that's the key question that we had. It wasn't so much why General Flynn wasn't telling us the truth. It was whether or not he was doing that because of somebody, particularly the president, having told him or directed him to do that. We now know that prior to our interview with him, he had spoken to the president, who told him to kill the story that was in the Washington Post, David Ignatius column, talking about these conversations. He had a conversation with his deputy, K.T. McFarland, about them. So this wasn't a surprise when we walked in. I can't explain why he didn't tell us the truth. And obviously he pled guilty to not one but two different judges, orally and in writing. And so I don't understand why now the Department of Justice is seeking to withdraw this plea. I'm glad that the court is going to get to the bottom of it to get an explanation of what's going on with the various conflicting filings. But our concern was always and remains not so much about General Flynn and that call, but why he did it, and specifically whether or not there were others in the White House, including specifically the president, who had asked him or otherwise directed or influenced him to have that conversation.
Because the president talked about General Flynn today, and because his case has become such a cause célèbre and such a source of an anger, sort of a touch point on the right, I have to ask about what you write about in the book regarding briefing the Gang of Eight, so briefing the congressional leaders from both parties and from the intelligence committees in both houses on these investigations. You write that the Gang of Eight were briefed on what we were doing within hours of the decision to investigate Trump, within minutes of the appointment of the special counsel, and previously about investigations of Page, Manafort, Papadopoulos, and Flynn. When you briefed those congressional officials, did the Republicans complain? Because they have made it seem like it was an absolute disgrace that you ever opened any of those investigations in the first place. Did they object when you told them when you opened them?
Not at all. Look, it was the acting director, Andy McCabe, as well as the DAG, or acting AG, Rod Rosenstein, but no one at that meeting. Not Senator McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, not the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, not the Chairman of the House Intel Committee, Devin Nunes. Nobody objected. Nobody said we had insufficient predication. Nobody said we should not move forward. Every question they had, they asked and was answered, and they were satisfied. Or if they weren't, they certainly didn't object. So I would argue that to the extent people have concerns, they first need to look at the Republican leadership of the House and the Senate, obviously.
The book is called Compromised, Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. Peter Strzok is its author. Mr. Strzok, I am honored to have you here tonight, and I am sorry for what you have gone through, and I am moved by your faith in your colleagues, given what you've been through, and the way you talk about serving this country. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.